Hi, this is your host, Gian Lombeyda, and welcome to the LACHSA Masterclass podcast. Today, we are joined by the incredible Jeffrey Obrow, director, writer, and producer, who has directed incredible films such as The Dorm That Dripped Blood, The Power, The Kindred, The Servants of Twilight, Bram Stoker's Legend of the Mummy, and One by One, working with acclaimed artists like Molly Ringwald and Christopher Lloyd in the process. He has also produced many music videos with propaganda films, bringing his knowledge to the USC School of Cinematic Arts, where he has taught and started the school's acclaimed music video course. Indeed, today he continues to participate in the honorable profession of teaching after joining the Los Angeles Cinema Academy and Los Angeles County High School for the Arts. All the while, he never fails to impress with newer works like One by One and Pursued. So without further ado, welcome, Mr. Obrow. How are you doing today?
Thank you, Gian. I'm fine. I'm really glad to be here with you.
Glad to have you here. So to get started, could you tell us a little bit about when you first wanted to become a filmmaker? What drew you to film?
Uh, I always liked movies, but it was especially when I was 15 or so and I saw The Godfather. I think I snuck into the theater because it was rated
Totally.
R. And I was sitting there in the theater and I didn't know anything about this movie, but I heard everybody talking about it. I
Certainly.
remember walking away, or I remember the experience while I was in the theater thinking, wow, this was the most incredible thing I ever saw. Who does all this? I mean, is that what position is the person who's in charge of the acting and the cinematography and the music and the writing and I mean, who kind of is responsible for that? And people were saying that's called the director, and his name was Francis Ford Coppola,
Hmm.
and he went to UCLA Film School, which is where I ultimately
Oof.
went to.
Oh,
Um, and for undergrad and grad, I went, and
so you have the full UCLA and USC going for
I
you.
did, I did. So I just that was it for me. Seeing The Godfather was
Hmm.
just so I got a camera and just started filming everything I could and making short films. Um, yeah, that's how I got started.
That's awesome. Did you always want to be a filmmaker, or did you want to be
From that
something
moment,
else?
from the moment I was 15.
Was there something else you wanted to be before, out of curiosity?
No, not really. I mean, I had liked films, and I hadn't really thought about, career stuff.
Totally.
It just all crystallized with Coppola's work.
That's awesome. That's awesome to hear. It's funny. One of the other guests that we had on a few months ago, they were saying that they wanted to be an astronaut before a filmmaker.
Wow.
So I feel like I've heard that multiple times before. So I don't know where the connection comes in,
I don't like
but
heights, Gian. So for
that's
me,
me too.
it
That's me
would never
too.
be
I
right.
totally get that.
It would never be an astronaut.
Cool. So, we were talking about your early on experiences. I understand that your big break happened early on, all the way in college, with the dorm that dripped blood. So, walk us through how that happened and how did that occur?
Well, I was in film school, and it was about time to make a thesis film, and
Yeah.
it was like, okay, so I had made a bunch of short films, and I had really found myself very fortunate to link up with a bunch of great classmates, and
Hmm.
we just kind of worked on all the films together and felt really positive about our relationships and all that stuff. And then, wouldn't you know, right before there was discussion about a thesis film or anything more advanced like that, the movie Friday the 13th came out.
Hmm.
And the film was made on very little money and made a fortune. And then, right after that, Halloween came out. These are the originals, right?
Yeah,
And
totally.
it was made on very little money and it made a fortune. And I said to my friends, you know what? Why don't we make a little horror film and then maybe it gets distributed and then maybe it does really well? Who knows? And so we decided to make it at UCLA as opposed to like a thesis film.
Hmm.
And or it actually technically might have been a thesis film. I mean, in the way we were doing the documents and all that. Maybe not perfectly the way they envisioned it at film school, but they didn't have a rule against it. And so we made this film called The Dorm That Dripped. No, it was called Death Dorm. and the
Oh,
distributors
okay.
later changed it to The Dorm That Dripped Blood.
May I ask why?
Um, yeah, I think Death Dorm's a great title. I think what happened is they didn't think that movies that had the word death in it did terribly well, so they didn't want to
Fair.
go that direction. So they called the film Pranks
Hmm.
because there are a bunch of pranks in the movie.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Killer, who we don't know who the killer is, does a bunch of stuff, throughout the
Hmm.
movie. That's like, oh my God, who's doing this kind of thing? And so they put it out as pranks, and it didn't do very well. And one of the smart guys over there said, well, why don't we go back to that idea of Death Dorm? The, we don't like the word death. So why don't we make it The Dorm That Dripped Blood? Because it took place at a dorm. We
Hmm.
shot it at our dorm.
Yeah, yeah.
And and uh, and that did the trick. Now people were coming to see the movie.
Hmm.
And I mean, I don't know if you were going to ask about this or not. And I know I've talked to you about it in the past, but the biggest deal of it, because it became a bit of a cult classic, is
Yeah.
in Scream 2 when they
Hmm.
do all the references to the homages to other horror films from the past. Uh, Jamie Kennedy, one of the good guys in the film, says to the killer on the phone, "Well, what's your favorite horror film? The Dorm That Dripped Blood?" And we thought, we've made it. If we're in a
Totally.
Scream movie as one of the horror films, because there's 1,000 of those horror
Hmm.
films that come out, so we were quite pleased.
I'm sure. I'm sure. That's quite the experience for sure.
Was
So,
Yeah, we were just 23 years old.
yeah, and after that, you started to make all sorts of sci-fi and horror films. So,
Right.
what pulled you to that genre of story?
Well, it's very simple.
Hmm.
I saw The Exorcist when I was 7, the original Exorcist when I was
Yeah.
7, Friedkin's masterpiece,
Hmm.
and I was so blown away by the artistry. I was so blown away
Totally.
about how everybody in the theater just kept jumping out of their seats. And, quite a different experience than The Godfather, which everyone was just kind of in, absorbed with,
Yeah.
you want to put it. But The Exorcist, it was just lightning in a bottle.
No
It
other type of movie like it makes you have that much emotion, have that much reaction in the theater too. So,
Yes, right, right. So I went every couple of weeks to see the movie again,
mhm.
and it was always the same reaction in the theater. And I thought, oh man, I'd love to do a scary movie someday. So
So,
kind of that was on my mind when I saw Halloween and Friday the 13th. It was on my mind about a scary movie.
sure, sure, sure. And I'm sure that reaction is so important to your process. When you do release movies, do you like to go to the theaters and see other people's reactions?
You mean when I released
Once you've released your films.
my own films? I have gone around the country and seen my films in different theaters in different states. Um, I went to Arkansas. I went to
Nice.
Vegas. I went
Mhm.
uh, to a number of different places, and it is interesting how watching the audience reaction makes you a little bit more of an expert on when you do your next film, because you can really say, no, I don't think that would work because I did something like that on my last film, and for some reason the audience just was not interested. Or, oh no, we did this kind of thing and it got the biggest reaction. I'm doing that again.
For sure, for sure. So, in on the topic of horror and sci-fi, you've told me a little bit about this, but have you had any extraterrestrial or horror-like experiences of your own,
I did.
perhaps?
That's funny. You and I never, I'm surprised you're asking that question. That's kind of interesting. I did. I had one UFO experience. I never really talk about it because I'm not one of those people who believe anybody else when they say it.
For sure.
But one night I was up with at my buddy's house up Topanga
Hmm.
Canyon, and we had just kind of finished dinner, and we just kind of went out on the deck. As a
Hmm.
matter of fact, for some reason that I do not know why, showing me his new Nikon camera. So it's like his camera was outside with us,
Yeah.
okay, on his deck.
Yeah.
We're looking at the sky, and it's all just completely clear, just beautiful where he lived. And out of nowhere, Xian, out of nowhere, two little dark orange bordering on red uh, little circles appeared in the night sky in front of us. We both saw it. I'm not a drinker, so it's not like I was having too much to drink or anything, and neither was he. And it just got bigger and bigger and bigger. And we're looking at these two dark orange lights, perfect little circles that got bigger and bigger. Didn't take up the whole sky or anything. It was just like, okay, what the heck is that? And we were so amazed by it, we didn't even think to pick up the camera to shoot the image.
Oh.
I mean, that's how mesmerized we were. And then once it got to that size, certain big size, again, not huge, but it just started to fade out again, and then it was gone. And we called the police. We tried to call like defense departments. We tried to do all this, and no one paid any attention to us. And we did see in the LA Times a few days later that somebody had reported. It wasn't us, it was somebody else, but somebody had called the LA Times to say they saw these lights, and there was no explanation.
Wow. That's
Now,
incredible.
could that be an experiment from the Defense Department? Of course. I mean, it could be any of that stuff, but it was freaky.
I'm sure. I'm sure.
Uh,
And you've also told me a little bit about something that went on that inspired you for the Kindred too. Is it true that you guys had an experience? Um, I think it was you and one of your family members, maybe?
no, remember Earl Ghaffari who came
Yeah.
in, the
Yeah.
music from
Yeah.
Disney? It was Earl.
Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, it was crazy. I mean, I had an aunt who was 100 years old.
Hmm.
She was from
Wow.
Russia. She was my father's aunt.
Hmm.
She was my great aunt. And, at a certain point at 100, she passed away. And my father wasn't like great at all that, like wanting to go back to the apartment and look at all the memories. And,
Yeah.
so my mom said, why don't you volunteer to go clean the place out? I said, okay. And so I asked Earl, would you come with me? We were buddies. We had done a bunch of movies together already. And,
Yeah.
so he came. And while we're in the kitchen, there was a pantry door. And as we're kind of cleaning off some of the dishes, we heard this kind of sound. Um, we heard this kind of sound from behind the pantry door. It was like this. And Earl said, oh, what's that? I said, I don't know. He goes, well, let me look. And he puts his hand on the knob. I said, no, no, don't. And he goes, why? I said, well, when my sister and I were growing up, our aunt wouldn't ever let us in there. She always said, no, no, don't ever go into that pantry. Or don't go in that pantry, whatever it was. And we'd been there like 30 times. We never allowed in that pantry. So when I heard that, I said, it may be that she had, you know, been feeding some plant and something happened with it, and a couple of chemicals got in there with
Hmm.
some plant, and maybe it grew into some little creature, and maybe that was kind of like she didn't have children, maybe that was like a kid to her. And Earl and I are driving home, and I said, and he said that'd make a really good movie. We had already
Hmm.
made a couple of movie features already,
Hmm.
and he said that'd make a really good one. And he wanted to be a writer too. He turned out to be an amazing editor, and then a Disney's top music editor. But he wanted to try his hand at writing too. I said, well, why don't you and a couple of the other guys that we're teamed with, why don't you guys kind of come up with something?
Hmm.
We understand the premise, okay? And so they brought me a draft of it, and it's like, well, I think maybe this and that. They brought me another draft, and then I said, well, why don't we team up with that other fellow we work with a lot? I mean, he might be able to. And then finally, I got involved, and and it it became kind of a big movie for us, and it did great, and it was a bigger budget, and it starred Rod Steiger. He's the guy who was opposite Brando
Yep.
in the I Could Have Been a Contender scene in the street in on the waterfront. and he won Best Actor in The Heat of the Night with Sidney Poitier. I mean, he was a
Yeah, yeah.
big actor, and the idea that we got him, you know, in the twilight of his career, but he was
Hmm.
fantastic. So that's our that's our Kindred story based on my aunt.
Very nice. Definitely more stories than I have already.
Well, you'll
So,
have them, Gian, believe me.
I'm sure, I'm sure. I'll tell you when I start seeing the yellow lights again, or orange lights.
Exactly.
We'll figure them out. We'll figure them out. So, on most of your projects, you've worked as a writer, director, and producer. But you've also worked on certain projects like shorts, like 7 Seconds, The Perfect Host, and Intimacy, where you only worked in a certain position. Why'd you work on those? Let me rephrase that. Why did you work in only a certain position when you've done so many projects, working on all three?
Well, the first two you mentioned,
Yeah.
they were sizzle reels.
Oh, okay.
That's what helped raise the money to make the features.
For sure.
Intimacy is a funny story. I've never seen the film. I don't know anything about the film. I had worked with this woman, a former student of mine at USC. She made a short called Intimacy, and
Mhm.
somehow my name got on it. And so now it's like, okay, on my IMDb page there it says, I've never read it, I've never seen it. Hopefully, hopefully there's something good about it, so that my name isn't attached to something it's
Yeah.
not. But I probably should watch it at some point or take my name
Mhm.
off or whatever. But or it may be this great film, and it's just an asset to me to have it there.
I
You know,
should probably see it too at this
yeah,
point. Yeah.
maybe we'll watch it together.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, when you are working on different projects, you definitely have to balance so many different positions. So, what qualities of a film director do you have to restrain when you're wearing your producer hat, for instance?
What kind of director do I have to?
What kind of director do you have to be? What part of the director capabilities do you have to restrict when you're mostly focusing on the producing part of your job, when you're wearing your
So
producing
you're
hat per
asking
se?
when I direct and produce.
Hmm.
Uh, so it's just me. We're not talking about me producing for another director, right?
No, no, just
Oh,
just
I
you. Yeah.
see.
How do you
Well, I
kind of
mean,
balance them?
here here's the dilemma with that is that, in my book, the director is supposed to dream. They're supposed to
Hmm.
just want to push the envelope, push it, keep going for the quality, and not worry so much about the budget and here's all the problems. Let the director dream. The producer's job is to be realistic.
Hmm.
It's to let the director dream, but then say, listen, that's all great. Let's take the best of what you've got there, but it's kind of got to fit in the budget.
Yeah.
So I censor myself at times in order to stay on budget and stay on schedule.
Yeah.
But I, I wanted to fight it out a little bit more for the creative stuff that I wanted.
Hmm.
So to do that with myself is tough. It's tough. But I also it has advantages because if you're directing and you have another producer you're dealing with, they can just veto you,
Hmm.
most of the time.
Yeah.
And I've been vetoed when I three
Sure.
of my movies I've made at production companies other than my own. And they have their own money, they put it in, but part of the deal is they get the say. So it is that's not great either. So
Yeah.
all in all, I'd prefer to produce and direct my own stuff.
That makes sense. That makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
So on the flip side, what makes a good collaborator, and who do you like to work with the best? What type of person?
Well, collaboration is so essential
Hmm.
in this particular business. As a novelist, let's say, you don't have to collaborate with anybody. I
At
mean,
all.
just sit
Maybe the
and write it.
publisher, but that's it.
Maybe the publisher, the editor, but you're really it's your world you've set up.
Yeah.
But here you have all these department heads, right? The DP and the writer and the production designer and the editor and the composer, and you can't really just keep saying this is how I want it, please do it my way,
Hmm.
because you're not going to work with the best people that way. You'll work with some people who really want the job, and so they'll defer to you. But if you want to work with those collaborators who really can go to that next level, um, then you want to listen to what they say for two reasons. One, they could be right. They could have an idea different than yours that actually makes the movie a better movie. But also, you know, just diplomatically speaking, people don't want to be told no all the time. They come work on your film and they go, I have an idea. What if we set up the shot like this? No, I don't want to do that. Okay, the editor says, I really like to kind of cut it in a different way. Would you give me an hour to kind of get it the way I see it? Because I think you'll like it. No, I don't want it the way you see it. I want it the way I see it. It doesn't come off very good.
Hmm.
So that's my view of collaborating, is that yes, it's important to collaborate because you will probably hear better ideas than your own a
Hmm.
lot of the time, and that's valuable. But diplomatically speaking, you just also don't want to alienate, the people who are helping make make you look good as a
Hmm.
director.
Totally. It's a tricky balance. It's a tricky balance.
It is a tricky balance.
So, when you are trying to work with that and when there are so many conflicts on set, how do you foster respect on your set? And how do you ensure a collaborative environment when it can be easy to have differing opinions?
Well, I think I think the first thing, and you're not thinking I'm going to say this, Gian,
Hmm.
but the first thing is, um, have plenty of good food on your
Oh,
set,
I couldn't agree more, actually.
right?
Yeah.
Of course, not only the catered food,
Hmm.
but the craft service. If you can keep people eating, you want to discuss your points of view with them, they're going to be a lot more likely to be helpful than if they feel that you're cheap.
Starving them. Yeah.
Yeah, starving them, right? Not giving them respect.
Hmm.
It's also important to make sure you can pay them what you can pay them, and to make sure that they're not grumbling about that. And grumbling, I mean, they should grumble if they're not making enough money. So, I think those kind of things are important. I think if you listen to them, as we just discussed in our collaboration section here, if you listen to them, I think they can live with the idea of something not going their way if you listen
Hmm.
properly. If it comes off to them, you just don't have any interest in what they're talking about, or they'll get a quick no from you, you are going to have problems. It just works that way. Now, if it's a James Cameron movie and James Cameron likes the way he likes them, likes things the way he wants them, and he's paying a fortune though to everybody, and everybody knows the film's going to gross $1 billion and be seen by
Yeah.
everybody. Maybe maybe they're more okay with it because they kind of know that he's a visionary, and okay, let James kind of, do it his way. I
Hmm.
don't want to be unfair to him. I don't know what his process is, or Michael Bay, but what I always kind of suspect, right or wrong, is that they have a vision and they want their vision met.
Totally.
I don't
Um,
know.
always over a good catering order though. So
Exactly.
for sure.
Thank you.
What's the best food you've had on set? On your set or someone else's set?
Yeah, I guess there was always something like every Friday
Hmm.
it would be a seafood platters with
Oh.
and crab legs and all that stuff. And I'd always say, because I'm the producer too, I'd always
Mhm.
say to our line producer or production manager, isn't that costing us a fortune to serve that kind of seafood?
Mhm.
No, they kind of wrap it in. If you have them for a month long, they're making enough money on all the other days. They don't charge that much more for the Sunday. And all I know is when I get it on the set, I'm pretty happy. So yeah, okay, keep it. Yeah, we
It's
could say
worth it. It's worth it.
it's worth it. We could save $150 every Friday by not doing that and just giving them other food. Also, people love the catering trucks.
Hmm.
Ones where the truck arrives and
Yeah,
then you go up to the window and there's a menu and they just make you one of 15 dishes. They love that.
that makes sense. I
I
would
know.
love that.
I felt that right about now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
I think I
so,
know where I'm going when this is done.
what would you be ordering?
I'm in the mood for Benihana today.
Oh, that sounds good.
They
That
said
sounds good.
grill. They
Yeah,
did
yeah, yeah, yeah.
teriyaki. Yeah,
Oof, oof.
I don't know that they're
Almost
open.
lunchtime. Almost lunchtime.
Yeah, it's almost lunchtime.
So,
Right?
on the topic of film,
Yes.
so after you were working on your feature films, you had gotten in the groove of that. You started to make music videos with propaganda films as well.
I did.
So, what led you to start moving over to that genre?
Well, I was in between movies, and I got a call from a buddy of mine who I had made a number of short films with, and
Hmm.
he was kind of a visionary at film school at UCLA. He was kind of like 5 levels ahead of the rest of us. We were in the same grade. We started at the same time. His name was Chris Painter, and he got this job at Propaganda directing. And he called me up, and after 3 or 4 or 5 videos, and he said, "Hey, listen, I've been assigned producers, and that's fine, but I think you're better than these other producers, and so I want the best. So can you come in for an interview to see if they'll accept you as a producer?" And I said, well, I'm flattered. Sure. Just one thing, I don't know anything about music videos, and I've never worked for someone else. So I
Mhm.
really don't know how to fit into a more of a corporate
System.
setting
Yeah.
system. Yeah, it's a better way to put it. And he said, I'll listen, I'll lead you through. I'll tell you how it works because I really kind of get it. So we did it, and it worked out. And I was there for 2 years. Yeah, it
Nice.
was really fun. Propaganda was just the most incredible place. I mean, so I was there when Fincher was there. I
Mm.
was there when Michael Bay was there. Uh,
Wow.
I mean, it was really the place. Antoine Fuqua was there. So we had a lot of things going on.
Was one of them the coolest person you worked on set with propaganda, or did you?
Coolest
Yeah.
person. Wow, I'd have to think about that. I mean, I did get assigned to Mark Romanek, who turned out to be this visionary. He
Mhm.
directed the most expensive music video ever made, Scream, the Michael Jackson, Janet Jackson
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
And he worked with Madonna, and he just a couple years ago did a Taylor Swift. What is it called? Shake It Off or something like
Yep.
that.
Yep.
So I, we were partners for a while.
Hmm.
But it was fascinating just kind of watching Fincher at this company because he was like 24 years old
Hmm.
and he was just doing all this amazing work in
Totally.
commercial. This is right before he did Alien 3.
Totally. Totally.
Yeah. So it was like, wow. I mean, I remember just kind of watching one of his films in the machine room. That's
Hmm.
kind of where they made the dubs. And I kind of look up and there he is, and he's kind of watching too. And I didn't really know him, you know, and I wouldn't say he was approachable. That wasn't really his personality. And I kind of looked up to him. Well, I did look up to him, but I looked up at him and I just said, "Nice work." I think it was Madonna's. I forgot the name of it. The one that was really very Art Deco. Impress yourself, express yourself. One of
Oh.
them.
Okay.
And I looked up and I said, "Nice work." He goes, "Thanks." I think he hardly even said thanks, but I think he may have gotten the words out.
That's good to hear, though. That's cool.
Yeah.
So, when you were starting to work with different mediums, especially nowadays with the rise of TV, have you ever been tempted to do more TV projects as well?
I don't know that I've ever done a TV project. I've had projects that when they were done premiered on HBO, premiered on
Hmm.
Sci-Fi Channel, premiered on Showtime,
Yeah.
but they didn't originate. I just made them as features, and then they
Mm.
bought them as Showtime original movie,
Mm.
uh, or a Sci-Fi Channel original movie. They weren't original movies, but we were happy that they said it.
Have you
And
ever? Have you ever wanted to do a TV project?
Sure. The way my brain is wired, it's just more towards features. But yeah, I mean, could I develop something for TV or have someone come to me and develop something? Sure, why not? I think
Cool.
TV is great. You know, when
That's
I was
awesome.
starting off, TV wasn't the
Yeah, no,
that was not
for
the
sure.
wonderful place to be.
Of course.
And now
Even
it's
even today, it's
really,
still
I kind of think of, maybe I'm wrong. I kind of think of TV as like where all the best stuff gets made. Maybe I'm
uh, that's debatable.
good.
But
Okay.
I would say, in my personal opinion, like Andrew and I, one of my friends, we were fighting last week with Esme and Amanda, another two of our friends, about whether TV or feature films are better. I don't know if it's something you can necessarily compare, though. They're almost like different forms of storytelling in itself, just the way you have to format them. But that's up to discretion, I'm sure.
It just seems to me, and I'm not sure I'm right on this, but you know, we used to talk about. I don't think people talk about this anymore, but back in the day,
Hmm.
conversation would be like, "Oh, you know what they said about around the water cooler the next morning after seeing that TV show or movie." At the water cooler meant, you know, at work, there's the water cooler in the
Yeah,
lounge,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and you people would just stand there and get their coffee and get their water and get their whatever and
Yeah.
talk about what was going on in pop culture. It was back then. It was always about a film that came out,
Mm.
and now when people figuratively talk around the water cooler,
Yeah.
it's about, oh, you know, Game of Thrones, and what did you think about
The
the
Last of Us
Succession? Yeah, The Last of Us, the Succession ending, and you
and
know,
Severance too. Yeah.
Severance,
Mm.
right? That's right. You don't hear a lot, you know, Euphoria. You don't hear
Yeah.
a lot about, oh, that movie that just came out.
Hmm.
So that's why I say that. I don't
Unless
know.
it's like a Marvel movie, of course.
Well,
Oh,
yes,
yeah.
but are people really talking a lot about the Marvel movies, or are they just really loving them?
Yeah,
Are they
that's
really
a good
saying,
question.
"Oh, when Black Widow, right?
Yeah.
That's Scarlett
Yeah.
Johansson's character.
Yeah. Yeah.
When she did that, I mean, people are really saying. I think they just accept the whole thing. You know, it's like,
More or
okay,
less. Yeah, that's true.
inhale the more, but I don't know that there's a lot of discussion about when this happened in it and when that happened in it.
Mm,
I don't know.
certainly. Yeah.
You're the right generation to tell me for sure.
Cool. So, where were we? We were on TV. Okay, so what advice do you have for those starting out in the music video industry or in TV and choosing where to start between all the different mediums and genres? Would you say you just find the first job possible, or is it something else?
I think I'd want to ask, what position are you most interested in?
Mm.
And if it's, well, all of them, well, that's one answer. If it's production design or editing, then it may be a different answer. Do you want more of a general answer?
Sure. We could have both if you have the time.
Well, sure. I mean, people, you know, it's really funny. I think about it all the time because I get asked all the time in my life. You know, I used to teach the intern class at USC. So we'd set up all these intern positions all the around Hollywood, and then kids would come into the summer class, which was an intern class, and we'd
Mm.
place them, and then we'd all meet. So I'm used to being around young people asking, but also I was a young person who tried to put things together. I think there's two paths to go, and you have to ask yourself, which person are you for looking at each path? Are you the person that feels most comfortable with doing the best education you can for yourself, you know, to learn the crafts and all that stuff, and then go out and get hired
Mhm.
and hope people will hire you? Or are you that self-starter that learns as much as you can and then maybe raises money, and now you're the boss and you hire yourself from monies that you raised, you know? Or you link up with a producer who knows how to raise money. So I think number one, you have to be prepared for whatever role you're going to try.
Hmm.
You have to you have to understand what that role is all about and how what a good fit you might be for it. I think you have to take the jobs very seriously and the work very seriously. I think it's not a casual thing because there's so much competition that producers would just rather hire people who kind of hit the mark
Yeah,
and and have the right attitude. And if you don't have the right attitude, you you may not be that right for something.
sure.
I think you've got to be a hustler. You know, you've got to find out where are those jobs or what you know what suits you best and what's open and where can you pivot and do something. You start there, but you move this way. And I made sizzle reels to begin with, as we talked about. So I had a script that I wrote with a partner, and then I'd raise money to shoot the best little clips from the script. And then I'd edit it together with an editor, of course, cut it together, put music behind, put a title design in there, do some sound work, make it really slick. And then I'd show it to money people. I found money people. And I showed it to them and they said, wow, that'd make a good film. Okay. So that was kind of showing my stuff, you know, trying to
Hmm.
show that I had vision or I worked hard or I could hustle. That obviously I wanted this. This wasn't just a job to me. It was something that I showed passion for. So that was good for me. But other people feel very comfortable. Um, you know, we have a few students like this at LACHSA, you know,
Hmm.
who really are very good at what they do and can get hired to do what they're good at and then get hired again and get they work on a $20,000 movie. Now they work on a $70,000 movie. Wow, a year later they're working on a $400,000 movie, which leads them to a $3.8 million movie. I mean, it that's how that works.
Hmm.
Recognize talent.
For sure. And in terms of, excuse me, as a director, writer, producer, definitely that's the path to go on. But there for those out there who maybe just want to, um, say, be a screenwriter, that being just a screenwriter is definitely a much harder job. So, what advice would you give for people who are
First
just
off,
going down one path?
I've learned in my life not to use the word just,
Yes.
referring to something like a screenwriter.
Oh no, for sure.
I know you don't mean it that way, but I
Yeah.
used to say that, and then I always thought that doesn't sound right. Yeah, he's
Sorry.
just a screenwriter.
No,
My
for
God,
sure.
what an amazing craft.
I'm
Um,
asking that as someone myself who would want to be just a
no,
screenwriter, so
no, I understand. No, you right. We kind of mean it like only,
yeah.
right? It just kind of makes it sound like
No,
it's
totally, totally,
exactly.
totally.
The vocabulary is really important in this business. Um, well, if you want to be a screenwriter, the best way to become a professional screenwriter is to write
Mhm.
and write and write more and more and more and more. And luckily, it's one of the very few of the crafts that you don't have to have any money to practice, to put towards practicing. You can, sure, you can take a class. Okay, that costs money. But you can just get a piece of paper and a pen. You can do it on your iPhone. You can do it on your Samsung. You can do it on, or Android, I guess you'd say, right?
Mhm.
You can do it on your computer. I mean, you can just do it and it costs nothing. You know, if you want to be a production designer, you know, or cinematographer, you actually have to have some stuff to work with,
Yeah,
but not writing. So just keep writing and have people start looking at your stuff, giving notes, understanding what that's all about. At some point, get an agent. Maybe it's a hungry agent, someone who's just starting. And they go, wow, I see the talent. I see the talent. So
totally. What's your process of interpreting a script and executing it? Would you mind walking us through your like pre-production and post-production processes?
So when you say interpreting the script, you're starting from the time that you mean starting from the time the script's already done.
Um, Maybe we can start from the beginning too, because I know a lot of the script. There's always, of course, script work that continues to go on through production in terms of tweaking, but most of it is in pre-production. So could you walk us through just your script process in general?
Sure. And I've also adapted a couple of
Mhm.
books and made them into screenplays. But let's say on the original ones, um, I just start by simply writing down ideas randomly on pieces of white paper. I
Mhm.
just start writing down ideas. And once I start like, wow, it's kind of nice. I mean, I'm not on my computer, I'm just
Mhm.
kind of jotting it, usually in restaurants or cafes or something, getting a cappuccino.
Yeah.
Then once I get to a certain point, it's like, okay, well, you know what? Let me start handwriting it nice.
Mhm.
Because I'm just scribbling now. I'm going to handwrite it nice. And I'm going to make like a beat sheet. Wow, that takes me all the way to the end of the first act. Wow. Okay, what happens next? Well, let's think about, well, before I get into that second act, let me think how I want this thing to end.
Mhm.
Because, there's a favorite quote, and I used that quote in the class we had together, Gian, and I just love it. The great Russian playwright Chekhov said, if you begin your, and I'm paraphrasing, but if you begin your play with a loaded gun on the dining room table, by the end of that play, the gun must go off. And I that just always means so much to me
Mhm.
because it's
Yeah.
like, okay, that first act, here's what I've set up. It's basically telling me what I have to do in the ending. Now, that may be too formulaic, right? It may be like, yeah, that's if you want a formulaic idea, sure. But it still makes some good sense. It's at least
Mhm.
good to know the rule. And then if you want to break it, then break it, but it's good to kind of know about you know, the, the classical, understanding of the three act structure.
Certainly.
So you just keep filling it out and telling friends that you respect, colleagues, telling them what your basic idea is, and then I don't start the screenplay till I have all those beats, a beat sheet, till I have them
Mhm.
all. I mean, maybe I'm missing 7 or 8 of the beats. That's okay. That's discovery for the screenwriter. That's like, okay, while I'm in there writing, I realize I'll have to create something here. But let me get into it first. Sometimes you're chomping at the bit to just start. So that's kind of my process. I do enjoy putting index cards up on the wall and sitting back and just kind of looking at those index cards. I know I can do it on my computer, but I don't prefer to do that. I'll write the screenplay on the computer, but I like the beat sheet to really kind of be index cards for me, where I can get more perspective by
No,
sitting
for
back
sure.
on the wall.
I kind of do that more.
It's really so freeing. Also, it's not great to look at a computer screen all that
Mhm.
much. Um, I mean, we have to do it, but it's good when you can find ways around the computer screen.
Certainly.
So that's
Certainly.
that's my process.
No, that's a good. Excuse me. Had a long week. My voice is going
You
out.
want,
Oh my
want to
gosh.
grab some water?
I think I'm okay. We're nearing the end, so so cool. Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense, and I'm sure you've taught a lot of us to that in our class, which we're so grateful for. On that topic, could you tell us why you wanted to be a teacher, and what do you wish for the next generation of filmmakers?
Well, those are two questions. Let's start with the first one, and then
Yes.
remind me of the second one again. Um, I never thought about teaching. It was never on my radar. But that fellow Chris Painter who got me involved
Hmm.
in music videos, he was also the guy who got me into making my first feature.
Hmm.
Um, I wanted to be a producer, not a director at film school. That's all I thought about was producing. But I would watch his films and I was blown away by his craftsmanship. I just thought, wow, this guy is understanding something that I do not. And it started to fascinate me. So when it came time to The Dorm, the Drip Blood, which I was just going to produce and ask someone else to direct, I thought, you know what? I'll try this. Let me try this. And I liked doing those creative things that I learned from Chris. So Chris then brought me into music videos. Then in 1994, I get a call from him and he goes, Jeff, I just got this gig at USC teaching a music video course. Both his parents were teachers.
Hmm.
And he said, but I just got a big offer to do a music video at this company called so and so, and I really kind of need to do this, but I don't want to leave the USC people, you know, in the
Hmm.
lurch. Would you consider teaching it? I said, I don't. I listen. I don't. I'm not sure that I'm really the guy, because I don't direct music videos. I produce them, and they probably want someone who. He goes, it's funny, Jeff. It's the first music video course in the country that's being offered, and it just might be kind of fun for you to do it. So I went and I met with the head guy for the summer program, and we hit it off, and I started it, and I loved it. I
Hmm.
thought it was great. Teaching just fits so many of my points of enjoyment in my life. Um, Being with young people who have dreams, who want to express themselves, they're looking for guidance. I mean, those are the things I like being involved in. So that's how it came to be.
Hmm.
And then there was just always teaching opportunities. So in
Hmm.
between movies,
Yeah,
it's good to stay sharp. You
totally.
don't want to sit home too much. And it's great to write a new screenplay or something, but you also kind of want to earn a living, right?
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
people are paying you to do something that's especially if it's in a noble profession like teaching, that's a good thing.
Totally.
Now, your follow-up question was about the new generation of filmmakers. What about them?
So, what do you wish for the next generation of filmmakers? What do you hope, how they may improve on what the film industry is looking like as of now? Or what do you wish for? What types of stories do you want to be told in the future?
Well, I know about this. I haven't really read up on it, but I know there's been this debate where Scorsese and Coppola were on one side and a lot of the industry was on the other side. This is maybe 2, 3, 4 years ago, where Scorsese and Coppola were talking about how Marvel films are not. Do you know about this, Gian? Where they're not
Yeah.
real like real films. They're more
Hmm.
like I don't want to speak for Scorsese and Coppola. I never really did read the articles, but I heard about it. But they felt I think that if I got it right, they felt that the Marvel films were more like roller coaster rides,
Yeah.
and
Hmm.
and not like films like they made story where it's all about the story and all that. Um, Clearly, the Marvel films are more about effects than the stories, probably. And I probably wouldn't have phrased it the way they phrased it because it sounded kind of elitist and all that, but I
Yeah.
probably didn't agree with them. So I would love it if story became really what was key
Hmm.
and performances.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
Certainly. And
I mean, I saw the first Marvel film. There wasn't anything for me to go back to see the next 17 of them.
mhm.
I mean, I know they're good,
Mhm.
but I think they're all kind of a variation of the first one. I think that's true with Star Wars and the 7 sequels or however many there have been. Um, but when I see other kind of movies that are dramas or really fantastic Alex Payne kind of comedies like The Descendants or Sideways or Wes Anderson movies, or when I see those kind of movies, they mean a lot more to me.
For sure. For sure. Story is so important, and I
So
do hope that we can bring that to a central focus again.
I would like
So,
that. I mean, I like the King's Speech. I mean, movies like
yeah,
that just draw you into something special.
certainly,
Yeah.
certainly. What inspires you to continue telling stories?
I think it's in the blood. I mean, I think that's who I am.
Hmm.
It's not anything that I think about. It's something that I almost like react to. I hear something and I think, oh boy, that'd make a great story.
Hmm.
Oh my God, you have a character who went through this and that. Boy, that is just a great story. Okay, let me just start jotting ideas. I put it away. And then the key is the next day, do I pull it back out again? Or do
Mm.
I start working on it a little bit more? Writing for me has never been, okay, I really kind of need to come up with something. Let me just think, what projects was I interested? Did I like? Yeah, there was that one about the so and so. Yeah, let me just kind of sit here and try to figure that out. That's never been it for me. It's a need.
Hmm. For sure, for
Yeah.
sure. Well, this has been incredible, and as we near the end, we ask every guest this question before ending the interview. If you could go back in time and give your teenage self a piece of advice, what would you tell yourself?
Wow, it is such a great question. I probably knew that was coming too. I forgot to think about it. That's a great. Do most people actually have an answer, or not exactly?
It's usually pretty vague, but they say something.
Well, I remember my teenage self pretty well, and I was coming off that kind of hippie generation.
Hmm.
I was on that young side of the hippies. Um, you know, I I had a pretty good teenage years. They were
Hmm.
pretty good. They were bountiful with emotions and things that mattered to me. And you know, I asked my dad once I was 30, 40. We were talking, and I said, "What kind of teenager? How did you look at me as a teenager, Dad?" And he said, "Happy-go-lucky." And I think that's probably true. But I also was a hard worker. You know, I mean, I took my studies seriously, but not overly seriously. I just had to make sure I got B's and a little higher than B's. That's what you needed to get into UCLA.
Hmm.
Now you need a 4.4 or something to
Yeah,
get it.
it's crazy,
Crazy.
crazy.
But that wasn't. Now, if I wanted to get in UCLA today and I was a teenager, I probably would be doing great at school because I probably would have still wanted to get into UCLA because Coppola went there. So
Yeah.
it's I think I did it pretty well my teenage years. So and I made a feature in my early 20s. So I was doing the right things to kind of be where I needed to be. Um yeah, that's my answer.
Certainly,
Does that
certainly.
feel, does that fall into the category of vague?
No, no, that's definitely good to hear, and it's uplifting almost to know that.
Yeah, and by the way, if you asked me, and you don't need to believe me, but if you said, "What regrets did you have in your 30s?" I might have a list of 7 things. But my teenage years that you asked about, I stick with my answer.
Is there anything you wish you could have known at that time about like as you were going into the film industry and starting to learn more about the world around you? Which was there anything you wish you could have known or heard
Well,
from yourself?
that's a different question. That requires a different part of my brain.
Like something you know now, some sort of experience that's taught you something that maybe you didn't know before.
Well, I'll tell you the honest. the true, honest answer. Regarding personal items, regarding
Mhm.
personality stuff,
Yeah.
relationships, all that, yes, about 4 dozen things I wish
Mhm.
I knew. If the question is the same question, but it's about work and the film business, no, I think I had a good next step, next step, next step. I took it seriously enough. I did what I needed to do. I learned what I needed to learn.
Certainly.
Personally, though, man, I have about 100
Mm.
things that I
Oh,
wish I knew as a
don't
teen.
we all? Don't we all, though?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's a famous quote, Gian. I'm sure you've heard it, but I think it's really true. Youth is wasted on the young.
Mm.
Have you ever heard that?
I
And
have. I have.
which really means, you know, kids aren't really inhaling how special it is to be where they are as young people. And it's when they get older that they look back and they go, oh, if I knew how special that was when I was younger, I would have leaned into it a lot more. I would have,
Yeah.
but I did lean into being a teenager. I did go through that experience with in the way that I'm happy with.
So if we're grateful and take advantage of these years, then and put in the work necessary, then we should be okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's about finding meaning in life. What gives you meaning? Where do you find enjoyment? You know, where do
Hmm.
you where do you they say, I know you've heard this too. They say on your deathbed, you don't hear anybody ever say, I wish I worked harder.
Yeah.
It's always, I wish I spent more time with family, or I wish I
Hmm.
spent more time with loved ones. I
Certainly,
wish I
certainly.
spent more. It's emotional things, and I live my life kind of that way. It's like I want just I'm looking for special moments,
Hmm.
um, not an Oscar sitting on my
Hmm.
desk, on my mantle.
For sure.
Yeah.
Certainly. Well, this has been amazing. You've certainly dropped so many gems today. So
Thanks,
I'm
Jim.
so grateful, and I'm sure all of our listeners are. Once again, this was Jeffrey Obrow. You can find him at his IMDb or
No, that's fine.
okay, at his
Oh,
IMDb
yeah, IMDb.
at his IMDb page. Well, awesome. Thanks again, Mr. Obrow, and
Gian, Gian, I
this has
loved
been
it.
incredible.
You did a great job.
Why,
Really glad.
thank you, thank you. We'll see you all next time on the LACHSA Masterclass podcast.